Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the PMA-CIBC Summit Series. Today is episode 3 of season 3. Thank you to everyone in the audience today and everyone in the industry for such strong support to keep this Summit Series program fresh with new topics and discussions each month. Before we get started with our program, we acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, we give our respect to its first inhabitants. Because our audience is national this morning, if you are joining us from outside of the Toronto area, I encourage you to learn more about the traditional territories where you live, learn, and work. Finally, we stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, and we support our friends and neighbors and colleagues here at home during this very difficult time. I encourage you to visit and support the businesses in the local Ukrainian community, or to donate to the Red Cross, Red Crescent Humanitarian Crisis Appeal, where the federal government will match donations. So welcome. My name is Chris Markovic, and on behalf of PMA Brethour Realty Group, CIBC, our title sponsor, and our media partner, we are thrilled to have you all join us. I'm pleased to welcome Andy Brethour, who will kick us off with a quick highlight synopsis of where we are today. Andy.
Thank you, Chris. It's always quick, right? Try to be quick. Great to be with you all this morning. Thank you for joining us. This has been a remarkable series. We are now strengthening once again into a very, very powerful group this morning on our broker summit. It's a repeat in effect of some of the most powerful players in this marketplace, and you're going to meet them in a few minutes, Hunny and Vicky and Michael and Sahil, and I welcome each one of those to our panel this morning. Lisa Carboni, our Vice President of PMA-Insiders, will give them a more formal introduction in just a minute. How blessed are we? How blessed are we as a city and a nation to be independent of these struggles going on in Western Europe? I mean, it's just quite remarkable, really, as we sit here and talk about real estate in the midst of a war in the midst of a horrible transactions going on in that part of our world. And I can't help but think what an island we are in North America in many ways. It's been proven time and time again. So let's remember to kind of kiss the ground we live on here, how fortunate each and every one of us is. Okay, we're in a period of transition, very interesting transition in Q1. We're going from a period of free money to cheap money. Now, free money, we've been running through the pandemic with, mortgage rates at less than 2%, historic levels of rates that we had never, ever seen before. And in this first quarter, we've seen Bank of Canada raise 75 basis points now to 1% Bank of Canada rate. That's moved prime to 3.2 and on its way probably to 4. We're going to see Bank of Canada continue to move rates aggressively through the balance of this year as they wrestle with inflation. And inflation is now at world record heights back to 2 decades. Now I think 6.7% was the number for early March, and absolutely astounding numbers. Partly influenced by war, but partly also spending in our own largesse during the pandemic, so that we're paying for that monies that we printed during that period. Now, what I'm going to kind of note is that this transition is occurring in Q1 quite specifically. In other words, if you look at the actual price movement of product in the GTA, you see numbers of 18% year over year, 31% over the year before that. Actually, it was pretty flat through most of last year. If you look month to month to month to month to month, it stayed pretty even. In fact, the overall is less than 5%. But it was in this first quarter, in Q1, where we saw another frothy jump, almost irrational jump in prices. And that was driven predominantly by, I think, the anticipation of higher rates, and that the consumer jumped on board through Q1. And with continuing very tight supply, we've never been in a position where supply of product, both new and resale, are at lows we've never touched on before. And with a resale supply of active listings at 4,800 units, I think it is, or 4,500, very, very low. New housing is just ludicrous on low-rise product, less than 1,000. So it's just an amazing supply constraint against what continued to be a reasonable demand. So we've got a first half, second half year in front of us. First half is going to be still continue to be reasonably strong as this market responds, both a continuing strengthening or holding of demand against this very, very tight supply. But by summer leading into fall, you should see some of these supply pressures, particularly on resale, begin to subside as listing supply continues to increase, as rates increase. And that will cause more product to come to market. On the new home side, it's still, it's how do you turn this ship around in the harbor? It's going to take several years before we're able to do any significant change in supply on the new housing side, but it needs to happen. One of the underlying trends that's really interesting right now, particularly through Q1, is condo high-rise. And condo high-rise resale in 416 was twice as many units sold as detached. This actually caused the overall price to kind of subside a little bit as the lower price of condo from February to March gave a lower average price. It's risen overall to over 32% of market share. That's remarkable. Historic average is 22 to 23%. So the consumer's responding to buying into affordability or the best they can, even though those prices are, 800,000 plus. That's where it's been. I think this trend continues, and you're going to see condo take a significantly greater share, particularly in 416. 905 is lesser degree. It's only about a third of market, and but that will improve also. So you've got this trend line. Now this will lead to a sense of lowering prices overall, because the condo proportion of overall market will influence the overall average. But I also think that interest rates will have the same impact. So this first quarter kind of frothy number that we've faced is going to dissipate a little bit into the second half. So you've got a first half continuing really strong and a second half soft. Now, there's nothing on the horizon unless we see a very rapid movement in interest rates from the Bank of Canada, more rapid or more severe than what they've currently held on to, that would point to any significant or major correction. We do see a softening. Probably this first quarter's move of around 10% in values will probably ease off a little by the second half. But Toronto as a destination from around the world, and continuing strong immigration, and our tremendous economic underlying strength is going to remain a kind of island in the universe. So I would see us in a rather stable position as we move forward. The one big unknown might be on the stress test. We're now 5-year posted, or at least 5-year discounted rate from CIBC at 4%. That means I've got a 6-point qualifying rate above the 5.25 floor that OSFI puts out there. So you've got this continuing to rise, probably another full percentage point by the fall. So we're going to have to qualify people at 7. Don't forget, the 90s average mortgage rate was 11.75. I was the first one on my block in 1984 to have a mortgage at 21%. How exciting. So we are moving in a period from free money to cheap money, and the market will adjust to that accordingly. Inflationary pressures may bring incomes up, obviously, fairly dramatically, but it'll also bring it in line with some of the affordability crunch. The cornerstone of all of it still continues to be supply, 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 supply. And that's where the message has to continue hard. You're seeing it from Build and our other organizations. So there's the story of where we are. Now over to the real fighters and movers and shakers in the market, our resale partners. They are absolutely phenomenal. They're doing an amazing job out there, and they're in the trenches, and they know the real hard story. So Lisa Carboni, our VP of fabulous VP of our insiders, introduce your team, your panel today.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Thanks. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for an exciting edition of the Summit. As Andy said, my name is Lisa Carboni, and I'm thrilled to moderate this session. It is so good to connect with colleagues for such a great discussion that will help us unpack, explore, and understand where the market is headed. We are joined today by 4 accomplished real estate industry leaders who specialize in either pre-construction or traditional resale. First, we have Hunny Gawri, founder and managing partner of ReMax Real Estate Center, My Investment Brokers. Hunny, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, everyone. I'm Hunny Gawri, co-founder and one of the managing partners of My Investment Brokers. I actually started my real estate journey as an investor. It was back in 2007. I was 23 years old and looking for an investment. I didn't even know pre-construction existed. Went to my first sales event and was just wowed by it. I knew, I wanted to be a part of the industry one way or another. After buying that first property, before I bought my next ones, I knew I had to get my license. So fast forward 3 years later, I ended up getting my license in 2010, and wanted to get a better understanding of what else is out there in real estate. So I dabbled in resale, leasing, a cash flow construction property, cash flow investment properties, and some commercial, but nothing felt as natural as pre-construction did. So deciding to go more deeper into pre-construction, teamed up with my partner, Mike, and we started My Investment Brokers in 2014. Fast forward to today, we have built an amazing team that prides itself in educating investors on buying pre-construction properties all over Ontario, Alberta, and now BC. We've built up a database of over 70,000 people and helped thousands of investors make hundreds of millions of real estate wealth.
Thanks, Hunny. Quite an accomplishment, right? So there we go. So next up is Vicky Huang, president and broker of record of the Bay Street Group. Vicky?
Hi, thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. My name is Vicky Huang. I'm the president and the broker of record of Bay Street Group. Bay Street Group has over 1,100 agents working in both the resale and the pre-construction areas. It's great to see everyone here today online, and thank you, PMA, for having me today.
Thank you, Vicky. And we also have Michael Callis, president of Harvey Callis Real Estate. Michael?
Hi, thanks so much for having me this morning. I've been at this position for 31 years. Our brokerage has 7 offices in Ontario, 288 agents, and residential is a big part of our business, and pre-construction has become a very big focus for our firm in the last 10 years. And we also focus on commercial real estate investment. I'll pass.
Thanks, Michael. And finally, we have Sahil Puni. Sahil?
How are you guys? First of all, good morning to everybody, and thank you, PMA, for having me join you guys. My name is Sahil Puni, and I'm the founder of the Elite Real Estate Group. I actually started, pre-construction right away when I was 18, instead of going through, the whole, university or colleges and things like that. I definitely had a passion for pre-construction for quite a long time, even beforehand. So, fast forward 7, 8 years, here we are, and I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Sahil. Thanks to everyone. We're really happy that you're all joining us today. So before we get started, please send in questions during the session and we'll try to get to them by the end of the session, okay? So to kick things off, we want to hear from each of the panelists on how they managed through the past 2 years. And Sahil, we're going to start with you on that front. How did you manage?
Well, first of all, it was a little tricky initially because nobody, obviously knew how to go about the situation. Nobody kind of knew what the future, would hold. But I think, myself, my team, kind of adjusted fairly quickly because things did go online. We were actually using Zoom pretty quickly as soon as the pandemic started. The thing is, when you're working in real estate, just like everyone on the panel knows, it's very hard to have an off switch. So, instead of saying, okay, we'll take a break and see where life takes us, we tried to right away see how can we improve, how can we still, keep things going. So it was, weirdly enough, we were even meeting people outside sales centers, standing like, 20, 30 feet away, screaming the price list and things like that. And, showing people from afar. So, with all the safety precautions, switching to a lot of the Zooms and things like that, we adjusted, and you guys saw kind of how it went after that.
Thanks, Sahil. How about you, Hunny? What are your thoughts?
I felt feel the same way that Sahil felt there. We were used to this go, fast-paced lifestyle, like from 2017 when the market accelerated, to 2020 March, like there was no off switch at all, right? So that change of pace really allowed us to kind of take a step back, figure out, like what's really important in life. So from a personal life perspective, a business life perspective, we were able to actually, take that step back and start working on the business instead of being in the business all the time. So on all levels, whether it was MIB as a company and I think the pre-construction industry as a whole, I think we were all able to grow and come out stronger than ever before. Technology played a huge role in that, and the adoption of technology. That, like before, even though the technology was there, Zoom was there, digital signings were all there, it wasn't as embraced by our industry. And, it really kind of goes to show that what we're capable of and how much more we can do in a small amount of time. So now our new normal is like we've created a new normal, and we've been able to do way more launches, do way more deals in a shorter period of time, virtually, which is amazing accomplishment. And that I think the two major things were embracing the change of pace and adoption of technology.
Absolutely, definitely went virtual. So, Vicky, your thoughts?
Okay, so for our brokerage, we actually had a really hard time at the beginning of the lockdown. The first 2 weeks, like the agents and the clients, they are all very scared. They don't know like how the market going to be like. And it seems like a lot of things, they just suddenly got paused. Then we decided to transfer everything online 2 weeks after lockdown. So we started office meeting, the training sessions online, and we started booking Zoom meeting with the clients online to talk about the market condition. And we're doing the virtual open house, selling the pre-construction through the Zoom meeting and DocuSign. Luckily, so the market was only impacted temporarily. Very soon we had a bullish market, and but since we have learned this remote selling process, it definitely changed our working style. So even we can meet in person more often this year, we still use this hybrid model to serve our agents and clients. And for us, I think once we get used to it, we're doing even better than before.
Thank you, Vicky. Definitely much more efficient now. Michael, your thoughts?
Thank you. One of the things I like to say, and I think it's important for all of us to keep in mind, is it's very popular for everyone to say, we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. Well, actually, we're all in the same storm. We're all in different boats. And our industry is very fortunate to be in the boat that we're in. We're lucky that we were deemed an essential service. On a personal level, we're very grateful that we've got support staff, numerous support staff that have been with us for 25, one person 45 years. So our showings went from 155 on March 8th to 5 on April 18th. So our business really, the taps turned off completely. And we made a decision, my father and myself, that if we have to work for nothing, we will, but we're not going to have a single layoff. And none of us had a crystal ball that the market would pick up, which of course it did, thankfully. But we've gone completely digital. We have engagement meetings every day of the business week, sales meeting, training, coaching. I just got off a call at 10 o'clock this morning, and we've made a decision to be in touch with our salespeople constantly. Everyone on our management team reaches out to 5 to 10 people a week, just checking in, making sure that they're okay. This is not, business checkups, it's personal checkups. And it's been a challenging time. But as I said, I'm very grateful to be in the industry that we're all lucky enough to be in. And I'll pass.
The personal touch is admirable, and it is important this time, being in contact with people and staying in touch with your staff. So thank you everyone for that. So staying with the theme of then and now, at the onset of COVID, we saw the migration of so many home buyers moving to small town Ontario or to cottage country, because essentially they could all of a sudden start working from home. We then saw huge price escalations in the overall GTA and then everywhere. So then fast forward to the past few weeks where we've seen these significant increases in interest rates, which with the potential of more to come. So taking this all into consideration, what are your clients telling you today? I'll direct this question to Vicky.
Thank you, Lisa. Some of our clients, they are very hesitant right now. I think it's more of the psychological impact. It's pretty normal that people got scared when there are like some sort of the new policies aiming at surprising the market and along with the interest rate increase. So they're just naturally thinking the market is going down and the history is going to repeat itself. They're afraid that the year 2017 is coming back. So pre-construction deals are canceled after the units being booked, and less buyers, they are in the bidding on the resale process. So they want to wait. Our clients, they want to wait and see where the market goes. They're afraid that if they're buying now, they're buying at the peak price and high interest rate. So the cost for holding the property is pretty expensive. So they think it's not a good time to invest in the real estate. Some people think the principle to invest in the real estate is to buy low and sell high. Now they even want to sell their primary residence and to hold the cash where the market crash, so they can jump back in and buy the properties at the bottom price. So I think it will take a while for people to get used to what is really happening on the market. This might sound pessimistic, but that's a daily series we are hearing right now. So of course, there is also some seasonal investors. They're purchasing the unique products without worrying about the market fluctuation. I think most of the clients right now, they need the professionals to help them to understand the market, not just rely on some news and articles. Yeah.
Thank you, Vicky. So consumer confidence is potentially impacted. There's a bit of fear out there. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the press has grabbed hold of this and continues to talk about, major falls in the real estate market, major supply increases, prices down. But, I think we have to keep in mind that March of 2021 was the largest single month in the history of our city ever, in any month ever. And March of 22 was the third best in history, and the first quarter of 22 is the second best quarter in the history of our city, second to 2021. So I think, what I'm seeing, on the ground, and I follow our numbers on a weekly basis and our appointments on a daily basis, we've got fewer appointments, but we still have a lot of real buyers. So instead of there being 15 offers on a property in central Toronto, there's 9. But you only need 1. And that's what we're seeing in the marketplace, that people still want to be in real estate. And the last thing I'll talk about is, and that we saw, all of us, that prices in areas like Muskoka, dwarfed price increases in Toronto. And everyone was taught, well, who wants to live in Toronto? And I remember in a sales meeting, I said, don't count out the city of Toronto, downtown economy, it will be back. And we've seen that. And it's become, Andy said it well, is that it's become the only affordable alternative. And that's why we're seeing just a massive swing to condos in the city of Toronto. And I'll pass.
Thanks, Michael. So with your thoughts about the city coming back, my question is, are there still questions about cottage country? Are people still looking to go to small town Ontario or to cottage country? I'm going to ask Sahil this question.
Well, originally, even personally, I was more used to selling just throughout the GTA, whether it was condos or homes. But areas such as Muskoka, Blue Mountain, Wasaga Beach, these are areas we had to get familiar with throughout COVID, because people did want to kind of invest and buy, in areas where, there's a little bit less population, less crowded, because they had the option to work from home. So instead of working in, some of the condos or in the traditional homes that they're living in now, they were saying, you know what, why don't we go out to, a cottage area? We are going to be there for a little while because of COVID. We don't need to have, such populated areas, but people wanted a little bit more scenery, a little bit more lot size, maybe some water. This actually affected a lot of people's even mental health, where, they didn't want to be cooped up in, some of these traditional subdivisions. They wanted to be with their families a little bit, somewhere a little bit more beautiful. Now, you guys saw, and just like, Michael had touched on a little bit before, areas such as Muskoka last year was actually the highest appreciating city throughout all of Ontario. And, prices not only doubled, but tripled out there. And same with rentals. I think because a lot of people did not have the option to actually travel around the world, they said, you know what, obviously within the, restrictions or whatever the government had in place, they were saying we could at least have a spot, somewhere at a cottage where we can have, some of our friends and family over much more safely. So rental rates and appreciation with a lot of cottage places.
Okay. And Hunny, do you have any comments on that as well?
Yeah, no, the demand for cottage country, I think we can kind of segment it into two different categories. One is, people that were looking to buy a leisure property, whether it was a nice, a detached cottage, or whether it was just a resort style property. And then the second is people that were looking at the pricing with the whole change of pace that happened. People are able to work remotely. The appreciation in their existing principal residence was significant, and there was deals to be had in cottage country. So if you look at how it's been, or how that's changed, I think we're still seeing demand for the first type of category, which we're still seeing people that haven't bought that leisure property, but now want to get into that leisure property. So we're still getting those questions. Now, in terms of people selling their property here and moving to the outskirts, we're seeing less of that now, and a lot of that I think has to do with the pricing has increased significantly out there, so the gap is not as big as it used to be, right? So that's what we've been seeing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we've seen the same thing. Collingwood, Wasaga Beach, Muskoka area. There's huge growth for our sites that we're selling, and the interest was overwhelming, absolutely. So moving away from cottage country and small town Ontario, where are your clients showing most interest now in the marketplace? Sahil, I'm going to go back to you on this one.
Well, again, you kind of have to split this up into two kind of time periods. If you look, starting from the beginning of COVID and then about a year and a half into COVID, I think the demand for low rise anywhere, skyrocketed quite a bit, because your home was pretty much your workspace. It was your gym. You have people cooking. You have, everyone in the family was doing something within their own home. So naturally, the need for space kind of went up quite a bit. People wanted to have their backyards and, some places to roam around a little bit. So again, for a year and a half, as you guys know, it was almost like not even just the GTA, even the outskirts, anywhere within an hour of Toronto, low rise was just skyrocketing quite a bit. But now what I've noticed since the beginning of 2022 is because the price gap between low rise and condos was so drastic. Now the condo market from the beginning of 2022 has kicked up quite a bit. So, people are able to buy maybe something from the 600,000 to million and 1.1 price point, because now a lot of the low rise, is reaching like almost 2 million.
Vicky, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, sure. So we see that for the end users and investors, they are slightly different. So as the end users, since they're buying their primary residence and the place they're going to live with their family. So right now, I think it's a good time for them to get into the market. It's less offer bidding. They probably pay a cheaper price. So most end users, they still prefer to buy the relatively cheaper areas. And we found like Scarborough and further east to the Durham region are still their favorite. But we do also have some buyers, they want to buy into the good place, which they cannot afford before. They prefer the core location than those far away suburban areas. And for the investors, during the COVID year 2020 and 2021, more investors prefer the suburban area, mainly because the price is more attractive. And the people, they working from home, and a lot of people move out of the city to get the bigger space. But nowadays, in the past 2 weeks, some investors, they still buy in the suburban areas if the price is still attractive. We found that most of them are heading west to the Mississauga, Brampton, Milton, Oakville, etc., where these are more actions and buzz. But we understand that the land cost, the construction cost, the development charges all go up, which makes the price in the suburban is not that cheap anymore. So it makes some investors, they move their attention back to the GTA again. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw that as well, where people were moving to Durham for the price and affordability, and we've seen the prices go up in that area as well. So absolutely. So Hunny, I've got a question for you. What are your key objections that you're hearing right now?
So I think that the one that comes top of mind is pricing overall. The questions we're getting or objections is, isn't it too expensive, or how can prices keep going up? So this is where kind of educating clients is super important, and we try to have our team really have the conversation around the realities of, you know, the ongoing supply crunch versus demand, you know, our population growth through immigration, the other major factors that cause prices to go up, like Vicky mentioned, you know, cost of land, construction material costs, labor, development levies. We saw that massive increase of development levies recently. So educating clients on kind of, you know, what the reality is what I think the way that we're going to kind of overcome these objections. But price has been the go-to objection. Interest rates, you know, it's more of a, I think it is a shock, and it is something that has kind of made people pause. But again, when you look deeper into that, our rates as of right now are still kind of lower than what they were in 2019, and we were in a robust economy then. You know, as long as we're educating our clients on what the realities of Toronto are, you know, what Toronto's going to look like in the next, you know, 10, 20, 30 years, even though, you know, maybe other parts of the world haven't seen what we're going through, but we're unique. And it's really telling that story and educating our clients on that. That's really going to make a difference.
Okay, thank you. I remember 10 years ago thinking 300 a foot was so high. Like, can it go any higher? And when you look at the numbers that we're achieving now, and you're like, you just shake your head. You're like, why didn't I buy 2 units back then? So anyways, moving forward. So we kind of touched on it. Interest rates have gone from free money to cheap money, and we're seeing the impacts in the market. Have you witnessed any other changes within the last 6 months, from 6 months ago to today? And are you seeing these changes happening equally across all areas or specific submarkets? So this question here, Hunny, I'm staying with you on this one. So you want to give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look over the last 6 months, the momentum has changed for sure. But with that being said, from my experience in pre-construction or in the pre-construction industry, like, we've had similar cycles like this before. You know, a good way of looking at it is analogy of the weather. When we go from hot to cold, there's that initial shock, and then we adapt, and, you know, people get used to the new normal. So right now, what we're seeing is kind of that initial shock, and what we were used to, like before, you know, 6 months ago, the amount of people that had no hesitation buying, the questions they were asking, it was just like, you know, just give me a unit, get me a unit, get me a unit. Right now, we still do have buyers, and, you know, we're seeing the absorption of the entry-level units all across the board. So, you know, whether you're in Hamilton, Scarborough, Oakville, even Calgary, you know, we're still seeing the demand there. But in the short term, we're going to see more, like, some of that more expensive product that's really gonna, you know, probably sit there. And we've been in this cycle before. Back in 2015, 2016, it was all inventory. Like, you could walk into a sales center and always have something to sell, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've just been kind of spoiled. And we're just going to have to pull up our boots and kind of go back to work.
Yeah, there was a lot of frenzied buying there. Absolutely. Michael, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to add on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that hasn't changed is buyers' desire for the word called sanctuary. And it's something that we all really put a priority on. And I think if we can go back a little bit further than 6 months, and if we compare 2021 over 2020, I did a small study on detached homes, plus $1 million, plus $4 million, and plus $10 million. And each of those categories went up over 200% in unit sales. So it's being seen all over single family detached homes. There's such a shortage and such a demand, and that hasn't changed. And that's really what I've seen is a massive, massive demand for single family detached homes in the central core and even on the outskirts. And of course, as we discussed, outside the city. Now back to you.
Thank you. Are there any nuances or notable inconsistencies that you guys are seeing in the market at all? Michael, I'm going to stay with you on this.
I think, nuances. I think that there's, I have 4 kids and they always tell me about this term called FOMO. I don't know if you've heard about it, fear of missing out. Anyway, what we've seen is that people, just before an increase in interest rates, they want to get back, they want to make sure they get into the market. So what happens is, I'll just use a round number, the last home sold for $1 million and the next one comes out at $1 million and it gets bid up to $1.1 million. That sets the new floor. Now, the person who's selling their home after the 1.1 sells is not going to price it anywhere less than 1.1, and it continues to get bid up. And you have these buyers that have this fear of missing out. Well, the market is 1.1 today. My neighbor bought for $1 million last week, but what's it going to be in the future? And it's called future pricing, right? So when someone pays 1.1 or 1.2 for a house that sold weeks or months ago for 1, it's showing that these people are predicting that the future prices are going to be substantially higher. So that's what we continue to see is buyers with this fear of not wanting to miss out, and it continues on. And as I said, there still is a massive undersupply and still a major, major surplus in demand. And this demand will continue to increase as numbers, immigration numbers continue up north of 400,000 per annum for the next 5 or 10 years. The demand will continue, the supply will not be able to catch up, and the prices will continue to move up. And I'll pass back to you.
Thank you. Honey, did you want to add anything more to that?
Yeah, other nuances that we're seeing are when you have we have markets like, let's say, Mississauga or Vaughan, there's a huge appetite for those markets. Now, where we still see strong numbers, even in, let's say, like a slight downturn that we're having right now or slowdown we're having right now, is when there hasn't been a launch for a long time in that area, right? And a long time in today's market could mean a couple of months, but we're seeing that areas like if Mississauga has too many back-to-back launches too quickly, then there's a slowdown. But then Vaughan hasn't had a launch for a couple of months. We're seeing that those are anomalies and still have a huge appetite. The market still has a huge appetite for that. Okay.
Yeah, well, we've seen a couple of our sites. We released 90 units and we got 700 worksheets. So, and there hadn't been anything in that area in a long time. So all of a sudden it's just an overwhelming response to a launch. So understood. So let's just continue to speak about present day now, because we talked about the last 2 years. Present day is where we're going to move now. So as previously mentioned, we've seen interest rate increases and new policy discussions at the provincial and federal levels. We are still seeing healthy sales, albeit with some slowdown in certain markets. And we're seeing more and more people are returning to the office, either hybrid or full-time. And also worth noting is downtown, as we've all noted, is clearly back. So however, we're certainly seeing some change in the overall market. So let's dig in a little bit more on that. So are you beginning to see any impact on the market coming out of the newly announced restrictions on foreign buyers? So Vicky, I'm going to start with you on this one. Do you have any pullback or any comment on that?
Yeah, Yes, we do see the market getting slowed down because of this policy, but it's not because we have so many foreign buyers. And to be honest with you guys, over 98% of our buyers, they're from local. So the impact is more on the investors' confidence. This foreign buyer tax first came in the year 2017. The market changed right after that. We saw the property price went down. Quite a few buyers, they choose not to close the deals. And this happened both in the resale and pre-construction market. So it cost the individual sellers big trouble. Some of those sellers, they sold their homes and bought the new property. They needed the money for the sale to close the new purchase. But people bought pre-construction, especially the low rise, they couldn't get the mortgage on the original price because the appraisal value is much lower than the purchase price. So it cost the people to borrow the private loan to close the deal, or they just went to default. So people just worry about like this will happen again in the near future. So that's what we're seeing on the market right now.
So you're seeing increased fear. How about you, Sahil?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, just like Vicky, I think more foreign buyers actually buy in the States. And I think that kind of news and things like that kind of always spreads over to Canada. But what I've noticed ever since I've started my career is a very, very small portion of foreign buyers. I think people that genuinely live in the GTA are the ones investing back into it. I think, you know, they're bringing a lot of family over here to actually live. So they want to kind of live near their own family members and things like that. So I honestly don't think things will change too much when it comes to that. And I totally agree with Vicky there.
Okay, it's essentially a psychological impact when they make these announcements. Hunny, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, and I mean, Vicky, you hit it right on the hammer, right on the nail there. It's really for the confidence of the consumer. Like even for us, I think in our, you know, let's say 10 years plus, or 8 years plus in the industry, we can probably count how many foreign buyers we've sold to on our fingers. It's very, very little, and I don't think it hasn't impacted our immediate business here right now.
Okay. All right, so along this this line of thinking here, have global events had any impact or shaken buyer confidence, specifically the impact of the Russian invasion into the Ukraine? So Sahil, your thoughts?
You know, well, kind of like a little bit of a personal story. I think, you know, even, you know, my own family and things like that, we invest in quite a bit of, you know, real estate and stuff. When news about, you know, war and things like that start coming out, you know, you kind of put real estate, you put everything kind of aside a little bit, and, you know, more on a human level, you kind of want to hold back a little bit, see kind of what goes on, and be there for a lot of your peers. Like we have a lot of, you know, salespeople and builders and things like that, which, you know, could be Ukrainian, could be Russian and things like that. So we kind of want to stick by each other rather than more focus on, you know, the real estate aspect. But as things kind of clear up and things like that, I think, you know, should go back to normal as much as possible.
Thanks, Sahil. Vicky?
Yeah, so from our side, I haven't heard this as an objection not to proceed with the purchase. But I think this definitely impacts the market somehow. We experience the supply chain issue, the high material cost, inflation, and shortage of the neighbors. The war between the Russia and the Ukraine make this even worse. So it might also create the bigger gap between the developer and the buyer's expectation on the property pricing. Yeah.
And Hunny, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to add?
I mean, it's definitely been a hard time for a lot of people in our industry, and, you know, buyers and peers alike. It hasn't been brought up at the forefront of conversation with our investors or with our clients, but, you know, for sure it's playing a role in kind of adding to that narrative of, you know, interest rates going up. Like there's just another reason for people to, they might not be talking about it directly, but it definitely has added weight to kind of that sentiment of, you know, taking a step back and kind of seeing what's going to happen or how it's going to play out.
Okay, thanks, Hunny. So these next few questions are going to be directing to Michael. Michael, are you finding that your clients are still interested in participating in listings that have holdback dates for offers, or have they started to experience price fatigue and simply just want to wait and see?
It's an excellent question. I mean, it's funny, we talked about this at our sales meeting this past Monday, and one of our salespeople was talking about a scenario where there's 5 listings that are languishing on the market at 1.2, and 2 listings came out at 8.99 and sold at 1.3. I mean, how does that possibly make sense? But it's psychological. Sometimes, you know, people want to be a part of something that other people are interested in. So, you know, it brings up interest, and, you know, the 8.99, there's a lineup of showings, a lineup of buyers, and then they bid it up more than the properties that are sitting on the market at 1.2, which again makes very little sense. But there certainly have been stories of buyer fatigue, where, you know, people are upset, you know, buyers losing out on numerous multiple offer situations. But, you know, another agent in our office talked about a situation which was the exact opposite, where there is a number of properties. I'll use the same example, you know, that came out at 8.99, and the offer date came and went, and they came back to the market at 1.1 or 1.2 at the price that the seller actually expected. And then they would sell at or above market. So there really is no perfect answer to this one. It's, you know, the real estate market in Toronto has become hyper local. You speak to a salesperson who has, you know, 50 showings on their listing, and another salesperson in a different area hasn't had a showing in a week. So it's very, very different. It depends on the area. But what you're describing is the buyer fatigue, and it really depends on the area, the demand, and what's happening in the marketplace.
The other thing that we wanted to see or understand is if you notice that there's an increase, a significant increase now in the number of listings. We've heard that a number of the locations that we're selling in are starting to see an increase, some more than others. Have you seen that same type of increase as well?
There has been, I mean, but it's also expected this time of the year. You know, we're going into, you know, the snow's melted. Who knows, maybe it'll snow again, but the snow's melted. You know, we're getting into a spring market, and we expect a big increase in supply. It hasn't come, you know, flooding in, but there's definitely been slight increases in supply and the number of listings available for sale.
So is that essentially the key differences that you've seen that have taken place over the last few weeks in the market? There is more of an increase, not people aren't jumping on, with the exception of the odd listing that they're getting on the bandwagon and getting into a multiple offer situation?
Yeah, I mean, when I say the supply has increased, it's seasonal, and it's not so substantial that it's meeting the demand. There's still major excess of demand over supply. So again, the supply increase that we've seen has been not substantial enough to keep the prices down and satisfy the demand that's currently in the market.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Michael. Okay, so moving on to what's next. With interest rates on the rise, like we've talked about a few times now already, a very real supply crisis, inflation now at its highest level since 1991, affordability being on everyone's mind, gas prices through the roof, and current events around the world. I want to discuss what's next. So Vicky, my question is for you. What is your outlook on the investment community as it relates to today's market?
Okay, so as far as I notice now, some people, they're doing the refinance. They try to get the money ready and be prepared to invest when the market go down a little bit. So when market slows down, I think the smart investors would consider getting into the market. It might not be the best time to invest in the real estate, but it might be the good time. So we don't think there will be the big drop in the price. Most sellers who had planned to sell their properties this year probably already did that in the first 2 months of the year. And the rest of them, they might not be in a rush to sell. So that's why we see the inventory right now is pretty low, less than 1 month. So we're still on the seller's market. And regarding the price, most of the low-rise properties price went down in March, but we noticed that the condo price was actually increasing in March. So, and we also, we don't see a large, that's the difference from the year 2017. Right now, we don't see the large number of the buyers that choose not to close their purchase. Even though the government want to build the more house to solve the house supply issue, the goal is to build around 3.5 million houses, new homes by the year 2031. But the reality is we are short of the construction materials and the neighbors, and our buyers for the pre-construction projects are getting the delay notice for the occupancy. How could we build more houses at the faster pace? So if we cannot solve the house supply issue, how could the price drop? And interest rate increase is the goal to do, the purpose to increase the interest rate is to manage the inflation. But if we see it's working well, then there's a less urgency to keep increasing the interest rate. So we anticipate the market is slowing down a little bit, but I don't see there's a big price drop coming.
Okay, perfect. Hunny, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, you know what, it's the immediate, I think the immediate short-term effect is going to be, you know, and we're seeing it a little bit right now, sales slow down, and we're not going to get those quick blowouts everywhere like we were before. You know, it's going to be a slower and steadier pace, which is, I think it's not a bad thing at all. You know, especially if you look at the industry as a whole, slow and steady is it's better for our city. It's better for, you know, a lot of reasons, right? And I mentioned this earlier, just, you know, having inventory, going back to the days where there was inventory, where you can bring people into a sales center and, you know, have options to sell. I think that we're going to, you know, have that come more. It's going to happen more and more so in the next, I'd say at least couple of months. You know, how long it lasts, it really comes down to how quickly people adjust to this new norm, right? Also, we're going to start seeing, I think we're going to start seeing investor attention divert to the different products like assignments and, you know, undervalued resale. Not that resale is undervalued, but it's more of a real-time indicator, you know, rather than pre-construction. Pre-construction, you know, it's hard to fluctuate prices on demand, whereas resale, if there's a deal to be had, you know, people will jump into it right away. And as Vicky mentioned, a lot of people are refinancing, so they're ready to kind of pull the trigger. And it really comes down to the first person thinking it's a deal, and now that's the new floor, and it just goes up from there again, right? So it's again, overall, immediately probably slower, and then eventually, you know, the outlook is that it just we hopefully we continue at a steady and slower pace. But if not, I mean, it's just a matter of time before it goes back to normal. Supply is a real issue.
Okay, so you brought something up, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to stay with you for a second here, Hunny. You mentioned assignments. And so we know assignments are always an important factor for any investor looking to buy, because they want that option to get out. But there's been a couple articles in the paper. It seems like there's a heavier emphasis right now on investors looking to buy and not close and essentially assign their unit, as opposed to where we've been seeing investors looking long-term, right? You know, 5-10 year time frame. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing that your investors are now switching gears and thinking more, I want to buy now with no intention of closing, I want to assign? Is there a higher propensity of that happening right now?
So I think over time, as the investor audience has grown, you know, they've heard of their friends making money where they bought and then were able to kind of assign their property before it closed. So that ripple effect, or, you know, we're seeing a lot more of those questions come. But if you look at pre-construction as a whole, like, are we getting more inquiries than ever before? It's not anything new that we're seeing. We're seeing people people who've always wanted to just buy for the purpose of flipping. I know from our team perspective, we try not to endorse that. We use it more as like that, you know, if you get the certain price, you know, sell it at that time. But if your only intention is to just buy for the purpose of flipping, then, you know, that's where you can get kind of stuck. So we've kind of stuck to that narrative, and at least for our investor base. And now's like we're reaching out to clients actually saying that, listen, there's money to be made. do you want to assign your property? Because it's actually the right time. There's enough appreciation for people to kind of walk away with some money, and leaving money on the table for the buyers, right? So we're getting a lot more of that because of the increased investor audience, but we're also we're actually endorsing and telling people, it's a good time to sell your assignment now, just because there's money to be made, and leaving money on the table for other people as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Moving on. What are your investors now asking for, and are there any new objections that they may have? Honey, I'm staying with you here.
All right. Clients are asking for the buyers. There's still a lot of people with money, and a lot of it is from money they've made in real estate over the years. So clients are asking for deals. They're like, honey, I have money to buy. I want to buy something that's a deal. We've always had an audience for lower and stretched out deposits, but I think recently we're seeing a lot more of that, just because the buying power has gone down, right? So people having $100,000 to invest used to be amazing. Now it's not so amazing. So stretched out, it's not enough. So stretched out deposit structures and lower deposits are, I think, we've seen a lot more interest in that for sure. Objections, a new objection or hesitation or question that we're getting is actually, we're getting a lot more about builder reputation, right? That, as much as it was always, part of the conversation, it was more us bringing it up, like, it's a great developer and whatnot in the history. Now, with the cancellations that have been happening, and it's been a big topic of conversation for sure. And again, it comes back to, people are asking for, or wanting to hear a surety that projects will go through, that projects will get built, not canceled, or prices won't increase, and whatnot. So it's our job to kind of educate how that ends up happening, and kind of what to look for in an investment, and make them feel comfortable that way.
Perfect. Thank you. Sahil, your thoughts?
Yeah, in specific, it's not too many objections, but people are definitely asking, as Hunny said, for longer, deposit structures and longer closings. I think for investors now, we kind of have to educate people and have a little bit of a mental switch. I think over the last decade, of course, investors were making money very quickly in real estate. And, we've been very fortunate to be in Ontario where, people were buying things, and a few months later, they were making hundreds of thousands of dollars, which of course is not, as sustainable. So, what I've been doing recently is letting people know that real estate was supposed to be more of a long-term investment, right? So, you can't really time the market, but what you should be doing is buying a property still, because the demand is through the roof and supply is very, very low, and keeping that mental switch where, okay, we're going to be holding this for a few years and not just trying to make, kind of quick flip, right? Now, as Hunny was saying as well, with the builders, it's never been more important to have reputable builders that do have a track record of coming out with product and actually building, because we want to make sure that, some of the investors that are putting their hard-earned money into these projects do get to see the project go through and actually make those returns. Everybody's much more happier like that. So objections wise, none, just longer closings, longer deposits, and more reputable builders.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving into our rapid fire section, guys. Okay, so I'm going to fire off a few questions to you because we are heading towards the end of the hour here. So to start off, Sahil, since you're on the screen, I'm going to stay with you for a moment.
Perfect.
What home must-have features and wow items are your buyers asking for?
Well, nowadays, it's actually almost a luxury to have a big lot. I think, some of these new buyers and things like that, with the lots getting smaller, some of the condo sizes getting a little smaller, people want a forever home at this point, and having a big yard somewhere where maybe they can build a pool, kind of make your backyard somewhere where the children can enjoy and things like that. That's something major that people are asking for. And on a personal level, if builders could build some more great rooms with the high ceilings and things like that, something a little bit to make your home look a little different, that's something that people are looking for.
Okay, thank you. I've been getting the heads up that we're hitting the end here, so I have one more question. Any advice at this time to go fixed rate mortgage or variable? There is a formula in the market where variable will have fixed payments and difference will be added at renewal. Your thoughts? Sahil, since you're on the screen, I'm going to stay with you for a moment and then I'll move on to Vicky.
You know, right now it's a very, very flexible time. I think it depends on, you know, what people are looking for, you know, whether they're holding it for more of a long period of time or, you know, if they're planning to sell it a little bit quicker, if it was an investment purpose. So you really have to talk to your mortgage brokers, kind of see what path you kind of go down and then decide from there.
Vicky?
Yeah, so for me, it's like I personally suggest that most of the buyers take the variable rate, take the variable rate than the fixed rate. It's because there's a kind of I think to me it's a big difference between the fixed rate. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So to me, there's still a relatively big difference between the fixed rate and the variable rate. And like our purpose is to try to keep the cost low. So if you are buying the resales, I think you probably can take the variable rate for now to get the better interest rate. But you still have the flexibility if you see like the interest rate go up quite a lot, and you can transfer that to change that to the fixed rate anytime. But like if you are very conservative buyers, you just afraid of like you just want insurance. You are so worried about like interest rate will keep going up. You can lock the fixed rate right now. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all panelists. I'm going to send this back to Chris. Chris is going to take care of the draw now. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lisa, and everyone on the panel. Thanks for a great conversation this morning. I'd like to draw our names for our two winners of our special lunch. Will go out to Bob Stewart. Bob, look out for an email that will come to you straight from CIBC. And then the second winner is Daniel Waltman, I think at Genesis. Congratulations, Daniel. Again, you'll get an email from the team at CIBC. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors. First, CIBC, our title sponsor and industry partner. SR Law, Balcony Bliss, My Design Studio, Sagan, Smart Touch, Next Home, Buzz Home, Build, Oria, Reliance, and a very special thank you to our event producer, McEwitt Partnership, and the team who have been behind this program with us for the last 3 years, and it's been great journey along the way. Have a great afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you in a few short weeks.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.